And we are live once again. Hello and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome to another episode of In Your Face, live and uncut. Okay, let's start talking brass tacks. We're not going to beat around the bush too terribly much because we got another live stream later on today, which is going to require Princess Faye. Um, and hopefully, tomorrow, music videos, and then hopefully into Saturday, we'll be looking at doing, this Saturday, we'll be looking at one more live stream, and who knows what else we may be doing between now and then. So, you'll have to excuse me. It took a few days off to kind of prepare myself for this moment. So let's get underway. For those who've kept up with the Prince Magnum channel, first and foremost, there's a particular prosecutor here in St. Francis County. Uh, a very evidently, it's deeper than I had anticipated. There's going to be some interesting stories that are going to come out in this live stream. And if you got any questions, I'll do my very, very best to answer them. But I guess you could say the battle lines have been drawn, and it does not look good for our current prosecutor. So let's get this underway. All right. For here in St. Francis County, Missouri, which encompasses Farmington, uh, Park Hills, Deloge, Leadington, Bonne Terre, Bismarck, and a couple locations like that, just a few points in between. Um, it encompasses a pretty good size area. As a matter of fact, District 6 of AA, a lot of that is St. Francis County. Um, we have a few meetings elsewhere, but most of the meetings in District 6 take place in St. Francis County. Now, all that being said, um, you know, St. Francis County out of District 6 is pretty vast. Okay. That's the best way I could describe it. It is still kind of the, BFE of Missouri, but hey, it's our neck of the woods. One of the biggest problems that we have here in Missouri is there's a lot of methamphetamine trafficking, and the heroin trafficking is on the rise. So crime is becoming an issue. We're starting to see more and more issues that you would typically see in St. Louis reach down here, which is spooky, spooky, spooky. We don't like that sort of stuff. Uh, Bert likes to use a more derogatory term, but we have a lot of country folk down here that they don't like stuff that you would see in St. Louis. They don't want to see it. They don't want to be a part of it. So we need our police officers and public officials that are elected to be squeaky clean and to do their job properly. That being said, we have some fine police officers in our area. Farmington has a great deal, many of them. Not all of them are the greatest, but for the most part, Farmington has some really awesome police officers. Many of them I will vouch for because they have worked with me trying to help people get sober while I was alternate DCM and DCM for District 6. So I have nothing but praise for the Farmington police officers and some of the sheriff's deputies and a few of the other police officers in our area. That being said, if you have kept up with the Prince Magnum channel, you know that it wasn't terribly long ago that one police officer had been bullied. That would be Officer Ryan Miller. Ryan, if you're watching, how you doing, buddy? I miss you. I miss seeing you. You're a good man. Um, there's a lot of police officers that were bullied. Well, that he was bullied, and now there's a lot of police officers that worry if they're next if they make an off-colored comment. The problem is that you know you with this whole example of Jarrod, I could never pronounce his last name, but the current prosecutor, when he basically set an example, if you make one off-color comment, in my direction, I have no problem tearing you apart, you know, and you know, trying to make your life a living hell. Now, it angered the populace, you know, the people down here, but evidently that is not an isolated incident. Okay, recently, if you will, there's so many stories that comes across the desk of the Prince Magnum channel, and one of the stories that recently came across my desk is that the hey, what's up? What's up? Uh, Recently, what came across my desk was was a particular story from the Riverfront Times up in St. Louis. Now, the Riverfront Times, I haven't, you know, I've never heard anything bad about them, but it's ironic that this story about, if you will, they did a story about the current prosecutor in St. Francis County being a possibly very corrupt individual. Um, so much so that since that article, there is a running file on the current prosecutor here in St. Francis County. So that's saying something. I mean, it's this again. This is not an isolated incident. Now, if you're curious of reading that particular article yourself, I could tell you how easy it is to find. All you gotta do is go into your Google search or whatever search engine that you particularly like to use. Just start typing in Riverfront Times, St. Francis County, and it pretty well will fill in the rest for you before you. Evidently, this is a thing. This particular, you know, again, the prosecutor in question, we already know he bullied one very fine police officer, and good police officers nowadays are so valuable, invaluable. And again, I've worked with this police officer trying to help people get sober. So that's, I mean, this is super important. Okay. Um, and of course, it disturbs me to no end that this police officer, of all people, would be bullied. Again, Officer Ryan Miller, if you're watching this, I love you, brother. You're a good man. Um, One of the finest gentlemen I have ever met that wore a badge. Can't say enough good about him. All right. Um, Again, Jarrod. Again, I can't pronounce the man's last name. Every time I start to, you know, I just can't pronounce it. It's kind of an unusual last name, but nothing against the man, you know, for his last name. My problem is his moral compass, if you will. um, in the article, you know, to kind of say, get you prepared for the reading material, a lot of ladies that was working on his staff have come forward. Quite a few of them, three in particular, have come forward, and the newspapers down here, the Farmington Press and the Daily Journal, will not cover this. They won't cover it. I think they're and the Farmington Press, to my knowledge, may be owned. I think they're owned by the Daily Journal. Of course, Riverfront Times out of St. Louis, and I think that's a subsidiary of the Post Dispatch, which does try their best to do right. Um, so, all of that being said, these ladies have come forward and have said that that the current prosecutor is was sexually harassing them to the point where they were fearing for their jobs, and if they said anything, fear of retaliation. That he would even go so far, they believed, to have made up criminal charges, prosecute them, and try to lock them up. No joke, folks. That's some serious next level BS. Um, Again, you're welcome to read that article. It's very shocking. I actually, one of the things that you will hear me say here on the Prince Magnum channel, if you're reading a news article, whether it's online or in a newspaper, don't just read the bold print. Read the whole thing. Because that big bold print just gives you an idea, and it may not even be the whole story. You have to read the whole thing. And I think was some study, but it was only said like 15% of Americans continue to read past the big print. the big print again, and you'll see that with alternate, with fake news from some of your other news conglomerates. They do stuff like that on their internet posts. But so that's why I read the whole thing. Read the whole thing because then it'll tell you a little bit more, and you're able to decide how you feel about that whole article. Don't just read the bold print. Read it all. So that's exactly what I did. And Missouri likes its numerous departments, but evidently Missouri has some sort of Department of Human Rights or something like that. I've been up for the last almost 11 minutes. Um, there's going to be to kind of get you caught up to speed. There's two previous videos. I definitely recommend you sticking around for this one. Um, but there's a couple of previous videos where I talked about this, and initially I only knew about the story of Officer Ryan Miller, and I again stood up for this officer because I worked with him um, for about 5 years. I was involved in AA service work, the service work structure. Uh, I spent a couple of years kind of doing the smaller level stuff, within groups, and I started getting involved in different committees within the district level, and then before you knew it, I was uh, serving as an alternate DCM for District 6, which is down here. And I don't want to bore you to tears with the AA service structure, but basically, I represented my entire district for the entire eastern half of the state of Missouri as alternate DCM, and then I was the actual acting DCM for a little over a year. So, in that time span of about 5 years, well, about 3 of those years, I worked with a lot of the various police agencies down here, and what I would do is I would actually distribute um, AA meeting schedules to these police officers. And what they would do is they would make like a gazillion copies, and if they pulled somebody over or for a DWI, or they had to go to somebody's house because of violent alcoholic behavior or something to that nature, basically if they were going to be possibly arresting somebody for an alcohol related offense, while this person was sitting in jail, included in their paperwork was a meeting schedule where once they got out, they could go get the help they had for their problem with alcohol. Okay. Um, and this was kind of our, if imagine, if you will, and this is something that has reached this was an idea I came up with down here, and now it has reached the area level, and now people within the area, other districts are now doing this. What we did is, if you will, we raised the bottom by doing this. Imagine, if you will, you just got pulled over for DWI. It's probably maybe your second one, maybe your third. I don't know how many times you've been pulled over. And you're sitting in a jail cell. You're looking at your paperwork on your charges, and you know that you're in trouble for drinking and driving or whatever the alcohol related offense is, and included in your paperwork is a where and when, or a meeting schedule, however you want to call it. We always called it where and whens, where to find us and when to find us, and where to find help. So it was kind of like, maybe I should consider the alternative rather than continue the path I'm going, because it's just going to get me locked up in prison. So that was the idea behind it. And now the corrections division of AA, which basically what that is we go within the walls of AA. Well, AA goes within the walls of the prisons and jails and places like that, and tries to get people to start getting into the sober life, so when they get out, they don't have to become a repeat offender. Pretty cool. That's kind of our way of giving back freely, so we stay sober. It's a whole process that I probably should talk about in Sober Talk sometime. But for right now, that was how I started working with Officer Ryan Miller. And then when this current prosecutor started bullying because of one off-colored comment, and it was just a joke, this prosecutor bullied this police officer who also was an advocate for trying to help people who have problems with severe manic depression or bipolar. You know, the name keeps changing, just like post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, you know, if you will, we have an advocate, trying to help with alcoholism, and really, I mean, Officer Ryan Miller is a prime example of trying to humanize the badge. Trying to basically make the person wearing that badge seem a little bit more human, which is a great idea. Okay, the current prosecutor started bullying him and just really made it very difficult. And within a year, he had no choice. He felt he had to resign as a police officer. And this is just one of the examples. Now, I basically started talking about an article that the Riverfront Times had released. And what was in this article was there was three women that came forward, possibly more, but these are the only ones that the Riverfront Times was willing to talk about. The current prosecutor was very much evidently sexually harassing these ladies. Now, if it was just one, two, I could say maybe this is just kind of orchestrated, some disgruntled employees. But one of them in particular that stood out wanted to keep anonymous because she was afraid that he would come after her. And this prosecutor evidently, it keeps fluctuating. So I'm thinking people might be having problems with might be having a few problems here and there. But right now, one of the things that I found was that In Your Face doesn't usually get a whole lot in the way of live viewers, but a lot of people will come on later on towards the evening, which we'll be doing another live stream later on, and they'll watch like crazy. So right now, you're the one who can ask the questions that the other people might be thinking. So don't be afraid to, if you think there's something that needs to be said about this, that sort of thing. Something that you think that the people might, if you will, I want you to be the advocate for the people, okay? Because I'm the one that amassed this information. Oh, you're having problems too. That might be, who knows who might be watching at this point. Right now, a second one has just popped on. But again, you guys are going to be the ones that are the advocates for the people. So don't be afraid to ask your questions. All right. So right now, as I was starting to talk about, was evidently there is Missouri likes its departments. And a lot of times these departments can be combined. But here's an example of one of those things. Evidently, Missouri has Missouri has this Department of Human Rights, and I never heard of it. Evidently, I should have been calling them. Well, it's one of those things. Missouri likes to just. It's one of those things that Children's Division, or if you will, Division of Family Services, could easily be incorporated into that department, and just things like that. And it's kind of like, they could combine a lot of stuff, but they just spread it out way too much. So it's one of those things that I didn't even know this department existed, but evidently it does. Okay. So, if you will, I know of what they were talking about, that these ladies that have felt that they were sexually harassed to the point that they also worry about coming forward and talking to the reporter from the Riverfront Times, that even this department, the Department of Human Rights for Missouri, has, they're involved, and there's lawsuits and everything else, and these lawsuits have been in place since 2014. That's some serious stuff. That's some next level stuff that I'm sitting there going, okay, we're now just hearing about this, okay? And evidently, this has been all over the politics scene down here in St. Francis County. So it wasn't just Officer Ryan Miller who's been bullied, but also these ladies. And if you read the article, I'm sitting there going, dude, you have all this evidence against you, and you'll get these little things where he might comment. I mean, he really hasn't. When it comes up, he hasn't really fully come forward to be interviewed by the Riverfront Times. He's staying quiet. But anytime some of these things come up in other ones, like down here, where they kind of give them free reign, oh, how ironic that this has come up during an election year. Why didn't it come up before? This is convenient. No, dude. These people are coming forward because they want the people to know, because they want you out, because they're that afraid to let it keep going. It's not rocket science, folks, and I hope there's a lot of people that are smart enough to spot this. Okay, I'm pretty sure we got, and I know Big Bad Bird of Burt TV. He likes to put a lot of people down around these areas. He has some very derogatory things to say, but country folk are, they got a simpler thought process, and this sort of behavior is not tolerated. We still have a lot of people down this way that still believes in chivalry, especially the older crowd. The older the crowd gets, the more of a proper gentleman you're supposed to be. And believe me, it's infectious if you let it. Okay. Believe me, when I read the article, my initial response was, well, if he's half a man, let him stand up, let him, let him stand up in front of me and tell me look me in the eyes and tell me he didn't do it. That sort of thing. That mentality. If he's a real man, he'll stand and look the people in the eyes and say, I didn't do it. But that's the thought process down here. It's a simpler thought process, but it's straightforward and to the point. By the way, people down here will still fly at the stars and bars, if you will. And they do not care whether or not you think it's racist, okay? They don't care. If they still believe in the Confederate cause, they will stand behind it, even though it's been over for 100 years, which that's a whole nother subject for another time. Because believe it or not, even my people were involved in the Confederate cause. But that's another subject for another time. Okay. All that being said, okay, let's see. So after the live stream, if you get curious, again, I'll tell you where to find that article. All you got to do is start typing in Riverfront Times, St. Francis County, and that's about as far as you're going to get, because Google or any other search engine will fill in the blanks for you. And again, I will definitely recommend reading the whole article, because it's very shocking for an elected official, even at the local level, to be caught in something like this. Now, another story that kind of came forward when I got news of this story coming out. Again, the local newspapers down here will not cover it, okay? They're very afraid to cover something like this. Again, this is the prosecutor, and everyone down here is afraid if you cross that said prosecutor, you're dog meat, okay? Me, I'll charge into the hail of gunfire for a friend or for the damsel in distress. So here you go. And the guy is not prosecuted. We'll get to that story in a moment. So that story has come forward. Like one of the things that did come up in the story, like this one secretary, and they gave a picture of her, an older woman, and she's settling down. She's not interested in the wildlife. She just wants to be left the frick alone, live out her years. Her kids are growing up and all that other stuff, and he's putting the moves on her, asking her about, and I apologize. I apologize, but basically he's trying to put the moves on her, saying, how does she feel about a threesome? And this is an older woman. This is not her style. Again, St. Francis County definitely is a participant as a part of the Bible Belt, if you will. So this is definitely not her thing. Um, but yet this deviant, if you will, yeah, I know, and this deviant of a man, um, just very creepy towards her. And if you've seen a picture of the man, which there is a picture of this man included in the article, okay, this very deviant man, he's just creepy without the article, okay, just the picture alone, you'd be like, that's a creep. Is putting the moves on this older woman, and evidently that was a lot of the shop talk. Now, again, some other ladies have come forward and said that's not the case. Okay. Um, Again, there's a whole department in Missouri that's involved in this case. And to my knowledge, there's more to this case than even just this story and the story about Officer Ryan Miller. Again, there's even more with the prosecutor's office, and it's going to take a second to get to all of this. There's now a story that has come forward. Now the Riverfront Times has got their hands on, which came across my desk again at about the same time that the Riverfront Times caught wind of it. We have an auditor, a gentleman who was the St. Francis County auditor. I think his name is Burgess or something like that, Mr. Burgess. To my understanding, he's a very kind and loving gentleman, very family oriented. Um, you know, has a son that's about 8 years old at the time. And obviously, his son is a little bit older, considering that this story is about 4 years old. Um, what evidently happened? Okay, the article is still up. Obviously, the Riverfront Times, being a larger media conglomerate, is not so much afraid of the prosecutor, considering they're all the way up in St. Louis, and uh, they haven't released any more information. Evidently, more and more people are calling the Riverfront Times right now as we speak, yours truly included, passing on. Um, Basically, it was all of the women that he was sexually harassing. Well, three of them in particular. Two of them were willing to give their names. One of them was so afraid she remained anonymous. Okay. Evidently, she's got family that's still in school and things like that, and she is deathly afraid. I'm not. It's hard to remember it all, but the ones that did stand out is evidently. I mean, this was a thing. Like evidently, one of them was scared to death to take something by his house, and this prosecutor's wife was away. You know, it's kind of like that. She's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to take this by his house. His wife is at home. She's on a trip right now, and that's scary enough as it is. So you can just really imagine completely. I mean, if you have women like this who are deathly afraid to go over because he's that much of a creep. And again, this is all in that news article. And the Riverfront Times has left this article up. It's in their paper. It's kind of like that. And they put as much as they possibly could get. And the reporter who did the article is still taking phone calls, probably right now as we speak. I actually talked to him yesterday. Okay. But anyhow, um, to go along with this, one of the stories that was passed on relates to the auditor. Now, this has not been released yet, but it is one that's common knowledge here in St. Francis County. Hold on to your hats, folks. We had an auditor who eventually stepped down because there was a lot of corruption, and he felt like he was being pushed out as an auditor. There's a lot of corruption in St. Francis County. Evidently, there are more criminals who are elected officials here in St. Francis County than there is sitting right now in the county jail. Amazing. That being said, um, the auditor felt he had to get out he had to get out of the office, so he stepped down. Well, things are going quiet. He's living very successful, and living a nice, quiet business life as an entrepreneur. Um, and as he's living the quiet life, he's raising his kids. And one day, he's getting ready to tell his son, Mr. Burgess is getting ready to tell his 8-year-old son, "Hey, son, you're going over to your grandparents after school," which evidently this was a Friday. From what I'm remembering of the story, uh, you're going over to see your grandparents. And his son knew when he got to go over to see his grandparents, it was okay for him to take a BB gun. Well, he tells him before school, the son puts his BB gun into his backpack and takes it to school. No big deal, right? I mean, it's a BB gun, for criminy sakes, okay? You're just gonna annoy the neighborhood stray cats with this, okay? You see where this is going. Well, one of the kids at school, the BB gun stayed in the backpack all day, didn't bother nobody, okay? Evidently, some kid was going through backpacks that should have had that kid. That kid should have been in a lot of trouble going through other kids' stuff. I'm sorry. That kid should have had his butt busted, but, and found it, okay? And it was brought to, the teachers, and it was a big to do. And, the police was called in. But then it was kind of decided, okay, at first they were talking juvenile hall and a bunch of other stuff. And this poor kid was freaking out. But then they're like, no, 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 it was big. And, it's like, we can let this slide. It wasn't like he was threatening anybody with it. He never got it out of his backpack. Let's let it go. Our current prosecutor thought otherwise. Remember, this Mr. Burgess he was the auditor and was pushed out because he was squeaky clean, and there's a lot of corruption down here. So this is if you will, a political enemy. Okay. Now this is something that you would see in, say, like old communist Russia or communist China today. You might see this sort of stuff. Well, the current prosecutor took advantage of it, and he's really coming down on this kid, threatening juvenile hall and all this other stuff. And it was really bad. It was to the point where even the principal of the school was like, dude, really? This kid didn't really do anything wrong. And even the father stepped forward and said, it's my fault. It's my fault. Okay? Anybody should get in trouble, it's me. Okay? Because I'm the one that that told him this, and he just did what was normal. Okay? He packed his BB gun because told him he was going to his grandparents. This kid was upset, devastated, and it took a public outcry to stop it. Okay? A serious public outcry. Then the prosecutor dropped it. Remember, he's going after a political enemy. And in the end, the prosecutor, dropped it, but this poor kid was scarred from it. Okay? The BB gun is still at the police station. The kid can have it back. This poor child can have it back, but he doesn't want it. Okay? On top of that, I believe for quite some time, he was afraid to sleep in his own bed for fear that he was going to be taken away and thrown in juvenile hall because of this prosecutor. And I say man very loosely in this particular case. I won't even say gentleman because, again, in this area, there's a fine line. I mean, we still believe in butt whoopings down here because no butt whooping hurt no kid, if you catch my meaning. If anything, it's kind of needed more and more today. But anyhow, because of this, this prosecutor basically scarred this child. He's never going to be able to really trust a police officer ever, even though we do have good police officers and things like that. This child is scarred. to go along with this. This poor child was deathly afraid. I imagine he still has nightmares. Thank you so much to our current prosecutor, Mr. Whatever his name is. I can't, Jarrod, whatever your last name is. Thank you so much for giving a child PTSD. Because I know what it's like living with that from a younger age and having to live with it for many years. And so this man, I say loosely again, has scarred this child, okay? It's easier to build strong men than it is to rebuild, to build strong men from childhood than it is to, rebuild them after they're broken children. So, again, this is an example. To go along with this, the current prosecutor, evidently, there has been rumors, and I say rumors, there's nothing confirmed, obviously, about a hotel room at the Holiday Inn in Farmington that certain local officials do attend when they need their fix, if you catch my meaning. Evidently, all sorts of unscrupulous behavior happens at this particular room, and evidently it stays reserved. How much of this I don't fully know at this point in time. Again, this is a little bit of a rumor, and there's nothing confirmed, so we'll just say allegedly there is. Again, if there's nothing confirmed, then we can't deny nor say otherwise. And even saying it here on YouTube, even if it was there, they're just going to shut down and set up shop elsewhere, if you catch my meaning. Now, let's take a look at some other interesting coincidences related to our current prosecutor. Now, we know there's a particular apartment complex over in Park Hills. And this particular apartment complex in Park Hills, we know that it's kind of the epicenter of where heroin comes into our county. We kind of know if that's where you want it, that's where you get it from, okay? That sort of thing, which is ironic because right in behind it, this apartment complex is where my old home group for AA meets. That's the irony of that. Which nobody goes up to those apartments. If you're a member of AA, we know that already, and we stay away from it, even though our meeting place is right there. Now, you never really hear of any drug busts, to my knowledge, happening there, and the police station is not more than just a few blocks away, not even really 2 blocks away. It's like a stone's throw from this place. So we know what's going on there. The police really aren't doing anything about it. But I know a lot of the Park Hills Police Department. Something tells me their hands are tied. Now, this is the irony of it. The current prosecutor, that's the town he's from. Okay? His whole family is from that town. So if he's the current prosecutor and the police aren't doing anything, do you see where this kind of looks like, it's one of those, it's, again, an allegedly or a possibility, that sort of thing. We have no concrete proof, but it leads you to speculate. I think that's a fair word, right? Speculate in this particular case. Because if the police, if the prosecutor basically says, you don't do anything over here, and we know where the stuff is coming in, do you see? No, it's not tinfoil hat time, but it's one of those things. It leaves the mind to draw the conclusion there could be a connection there. Now, if you're a more paranoid person, obviously you're going to say, well, that's it. No, it leads you to speculate, okay? But there's other things that tie into this. And we're going to go way back. We're going to turn on the Prince Magnum channel Wayback Machine. Back in 2003, 2004, before there was a Prince Magnum channel, if you will, we're talking, this is going back a ways. We had an occult magic shop in our area, and the owner of that occult magic shop also had his own adult novelty store right over in the middle of Farmington. Now, at that time, um, my high school sweetheart and I had a an apartment in Farmington, and we were raising let's see, 2004. We had two children and that sort of thing, and we would frequent this place every other week, and usually buy all sorts of really cool stuff. As a matter of fact, I still have a ton of that stuff from that shop. I love that shop. I miss that shop being around. And the proprietor of that shop, again, he owned an adult novelty store. He also owned a an occult magic shop, which we frequented that regularly. And his wife also ran a bookstore, just a regular literature bookstore. It was really awesome, you know. So all good people, you know, they were good people. And evidently, this gentleman at one time used to be a private investigator. Well, he didn't give any names, but he said that someone from the prosecutor's office was trying to get illegal wiretaps done in the area. And and of course, when he came forward about it, it kind of just snowballed into, he kind of came forward about, the someone from the prosecutor's office wanting to get illegal wiretaps on his political enemies. Um, it kind of started coming forward. Well, in the process of this, few people ended up dead. Not the proprietor of these stores, um, but it started coming. People started coming up dead from methamphetamine trafficking. So it's again, the people started putting two and two together. Um, and to go along with all of this, the story came across my way because I was friends with the store owner. As a matter of fact, I at one time almost bought, because he was getting ready to get out of doing business down here. He was going to move all of his businesses towards St. Louis to be closer to family. But I almost bought his adult novelty store. Not a joke. I had the money back then. I was going to buy an adult, but my fiance at that time said no. I don't want to be the owner of a shop like that. I'm like, why not? It'd be fun, you know. Just and he was telling me about it. We were good friends. That was the day the two idiots met. The guy who sold it was selling the store, and me for not buying it. Um, but anyhow, so he was telling me about this, so I hung on to it, and thank goodness I did. Um, Not too long after I got sober, I'd say about a year after I got sober, I had a post-traumatic flip out. The police were involved. It was horrible. Um, and uh, at that time, the current prosecutor was one of the assistants in the office, and they were talking about throwing the book at me, uh, because that's just how stupid people are sometimes down here. They don't fully understand that unless not everybody who has PTSD was in the military. I've had it since I was 16, so I'm in my late 20s, and that sort of thing. And I'm freshly sober, and I'm having these problems. And I think a lot of people can understand that. And I had a drug addict for a fiance at that time, well, girlfriend slash fiance at that time. Very scary stuff. And she was stoned out. She was whacked out of her gourd. I think she was doing meth. I'm not 100% sure on that. But to go along with all of this, they're talking about throwing the book at me, and I'm like, well, now is the time to pull the trump card, because they're willing to throw the book at me. Then because of post traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, the names start getting, you know. Anyhow, hey, what's up, Bert? But anyhow, in the process of all of this, I released that information because the word was still out that this stuff was still happening, you know, about the prosecuting office. And I quickly released this information to the Alex Jones show. They started poking their nose around, and then there was attempts on my life. Thank you, Bert. There was actual attempts on my life back then. Um, I won't go into a whole lot of detail because it got pretty hairy a couple of times. But I thank my dad for teaching me the backstreet country style racing that I learned as a teenager. Because if it had not been for what my dad had taught me, I would not be sitting here today. Thank. Even though my dad and I don't get along, and Dad, if you ever watch this, thank you for teaching me that stuff back then because it got really scary really fast. Um, Without going into a whole lot of detail, there was some people in pickup trucks that tried to run me off the road into some pretty bad areas. You know, it was attempts like that to shut me up. When they realized that I was a better driver than what they knew, the word started getting back evidently to from what I understand, the word started getting back to the prosecutor's office of what I used to be like before I got sober. So they backed off in a real hurry because they don't want their people, you know, you see where this is going. So that stopped. Thank God. There was about a total of 3 attempts on my life. And they decided, well, let's just give them a slap on the wrist and a small fine, and we'll leave it at that. And that was good enough for me. Everybody walked away. Everybody was happy. Okay, we could live with that. It was, in a nutshell, it ranked right up there, just above, just a little above disturbing the peace. You know, it was kind of like that. But anyhow, so was let go and dealt, you know, that. So after all of that, I'm like, you know what? And we left, went to Washington. Love you too, brother. Went to Washington, Missouri, and of course, you all know the story about that. Get back to the area. Evidently, corruption is even bigger now. Okay. Um, so again, there's a lot of possible ties to the prosecutor, you know, and uh, and his office to a lot of the drug trafficking in the area. Um, Again, there's not enough concrete, so this is more, if you will, this is allegedly, if you will, allegedly. Uh, that's the way it looks. Okay. If I'm wrong, the current prosecutor is welcome to tell me to my face, look me square in the eyes, and tell me to my face I'm wrong, because I have met this man before. When I was going through that court case, and you know, over my post-traumatic and everything, and at first he was willing to throw the book at me, I seen him then. Um, and when I seen him then, the current prosecutor, he was still an assistant prosecutor at that time, or an assistant DA, however you want to put it. He was, I overheard him talking to some of the other assistant prosecutors. And I want you to bear in mind, this is about 2009, okay? And again, St. Francis County is it is, by many standards, it's a small country community, okay? Uh, you can easily just start driving, you know, almost, you know, if you live like here in Bontier, you can drive 5 minutes in just about any direction, and you'll run into a lot of trees, if you catch my meaning. So that's the type of, you know, simpler living down here. Okay. That being said, uh, there's not a whole lot of money down here. There's enough to make the community thrive well enough, if you will. Okay? And that being said, the current prosecutor at that time, I overheard, and one of the things that I learned when I was all the years in the medical field is pay attention to detail. Listen and observe. Some people think it's staring. No, I'm observing you because that's what I was trained to do. And that training never goes away. 13 years in the medical field. So you're trained to observe and to listen. Take everything, especially to people, because that's what I was trained to do. You observe people for possible medication interactions, things like that. So I was just following my training. Um, I overheard this particular gentleman, and I never forget a face, horrible with names, but I never forget a face. And I overheard him talking about buying an Aston Martin. Now, bear in mind, St. Francis County does not have a whole lot in the way of money. We do well enough. Okay? Where is an assistant prosecutor going to get that kind of money for an Aston Martin? If he's talking about buying one, where's he going to get the money for a high-end car like that? That's an expensive car, very expensive. Interesting. Where's he going to get the money for something like that? That's a good question. And then you start hearing the room. Then now, when you hear the rumors of the drug trafficking and the possible connections with the prosecutor's office being involved with methamphetamine and possibly heroin trafficking here in St. Now it's starting to make sense. Now we're starting to get more to the story. Makes total sense. Again, it's allegedly. And this is just what I overheard. He's talking about buying an Aston Martin. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, interesting. Interesting. You know, where's he going to get that kind of cash? You know? But I tucked it away in the back of my head. Never know what you might need later on. And now today, that story is coming back forward. And thank goodness I listened and paid attention. Relied on my nursing skills in the middle of a possible crisis. Because, again, you know, now today, we know that the current prosecutor, when the whole thing happened with Prince Dax, they took away my son right 2 days after his birth. Basically, he was ripped away from Princess Faye and myself. Princess Faye is actually devastated to the point where it's like, maybe I don't deserve children, things like that. And she's given up all hope. Me, I'm beginning to wonder, okay? I stood up against corruption, was starting to stand up against corruption. It didn't have the tools that I do today, like the Prince Magnum channel and all the various connections that I do today. When I stood up, started standing up against corruption in Washington, Missouri. So I had 2 children ripped away up there. But down here, when this happened, the Prince Magnum channel was still in its infancy, if you will. And we've kind of started to grow a pretty decent community. Again, thank you to the Maverick Nation for growing that community. You guys are the community that makes the Prince Magnum channel what it is today. And if you're fairly new to the channel, if you want to become a member of the Maverick Nation, hit the subscribe button. You're a member, okay? If you're a subscriber to the Prince Magnum channel, you are a member of the Maverick Nation. So, thankfully, today we have a community that follows the Prince Magnum channel and follows it faithfully. Some more than others, but hey, when you're on, and when you're not, we miss you, but we know that you're here in spirit, not in my car, but right here in the heart of me, Prince Magnum. You are here with me. So because of this, it's, when he allowed the criminals that represent the state to get away with perjury in court, not once, not twice, but numerous times. These people are still walking the streets. He knows full well that they deserve to be prosecuted and locked up in jail. The Riverfront Times now has this at their disposal. I actually talked to the man just yesterday who's following the case, has already released the first article, and he now knows of the Prince Magnum channel, and he now knows the stories about the prosecutor not prosecuting criminals, here in the state of Missouri that represent the state itself. And Princess Faye just got home. So this is where it stands. Now, for the record, Burt TV has also kind of thrown their hat into the ring, because Burt TV and the Prince Magnum channel do not like corruption, and we don't deal with all that stuff too well. I am still alive. We're slowly getting to the end of this. Okay.
Hi, peeps.
So without question, the current prosecutor is dirtier than what he will say. He's so far, I think he's trying to lay low and hope the heat blows over. But guys like Burt TV, Burt of Burt TV, Big Bad Burt himself, check out his Facebook page, and he talks about this. He's talking more and more about this. Me, I'm just doing the live streams of what I have available to me at this time, and I know Burt will also throw his hat into the ring as well, because he doesn't like corruption. He wants it to stop. I want my kids home, and if corruption is involved, I'm going to root it out to get my kids home too. And Burt just, if you're following the chat, Burt learned a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about while he worked security back in the day. So he relies on, a lot of training similar to what we did in nursing. So evidently that's a thing that works in law enforcement as well. Ta-da! Because Burt also had to be trained in a lot of law enforcement techniques while he was in security, because law enforcement it would make total sense actually, because you would need if law enforcement would need information from security on what the person did wrong when they arrived on the scene. So that makes total sense, and that's not sarcasm. That's just matter of fact, if you will. Because there for a minute, I'm watching myself on the camera. I'm like, that almost looks sarcastic, but it's not. Anyhow, so bear all this in mind. So to our current prosecutor, you have done some various. At this point in time, all of this information is coming forward. So if you didn't do it, you need to be speaking up. But I'm telling you right now, you've got criminals representing the state, and you're not prosecuting them. I know you're not, because I seen one of them in drive-through a couple days ago as I'm doing this live stream, okay? So don't tell me you're not doing your job, okay? You caught red-handed. They need to be sitting in jail. I need to be called to the witness stand, sort of thing, okay? But then again, it wouldn't do any good to even have to call me to the witness stand, because the information is public right here on the Prince Magnum channel. You've got a police officer that has said you bullied them. You've got the Missouri Department of Human Rights involved. I mean, it does not look good for you. So my suggestion, and I say suggestion because it's based on, knowledge given to me or from personal experience, your best bet is to back down and just quietly fade. Well,
I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. Completely off topic, so sorry, guys. But if you lose connection, it's because we have an incoming storm.
Okay.
So if you should lose connection, or whenever you get done with your stream, we need to start preparing for the storm. I think it's going to be pretty bad. So.
Okay. So batten down the hatches if you live in St. Francis County.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, dear.
No problem, babe.
You know what, Bert? I'm not going to steal your thunder on this one, buddy. You know I love you, and Personally, um, I think that should be your show. I think that should be for you. And I will help you with that because guess what? I've got some video footage you're going to need for that edited video. Um, so we're going to tie that in. And I'm giving that one to you. I'm not stealing your thunder on this one, but I will say, if I know Bert, he can make one hell of a video that'll blow the doors open and that sort of thing. Um, that relates to his personal story. I won't steal that one from you, brother, but I will help you with it. Okay? That one belongs to you. The credit there, okay? I'm giving that one all to you, but I will help you with it because you deserve that retribution, okay? You deserve that one.
I know this is kind of a dark subject, so I thought everybody would like to see Galaxy being cute and stuff.
We love Galaxy.
Have some fluffy cuteness since it's a dark subject. Dark kitty cat, dark subject.
There we go. I love Galaxy. Where's Taver? That's my boy.
With the storm coming, he's probably under the bed. That's where Galaxy.
Yeah.
I grabbed her.
Yeah.
Bye,
So
guys. Last time I'll interrupt you.
that's where it stands. So to the current prosecutor, Jarrod, whatever your last name is, my suggestion, just resign at this point. That would be the honorable thing. I mean, you're caught red-handed. At this point, I mean, I think it's safe to say you've been caught red-handed. The best thing to do is to go ahead and bow out. Obviously, the general public does not want me in here. I'm doing wrong. I let the seat get to my head. That is something else. Again, Bert, we're gonna let you. You've got this in your corner, and I'm gonna help you as much as I can with that. But basically, the prosecutor at this point needs to go ahead and say, you know what? The public doesn't want me anymore. I've done wrong. Let me just walk away gracefully. That would be the honorable thing to do. We know, judged by all the current evidence, that is not what he's going to do. Okay? Which is why Prince Magnum, I'm going to go on the record and say that I am supporting the person who's running against him, from what I can tell, a very wonderful and loving lady, Melissa Gillum. She has the full support of the Prince Magnum channel right now, no strings attached, because we want the corruption out. I want my community safe because, again, even though they're not here, I have children, and I want my children to be safe. And if an elected official is what it's going to take to wear the white knight hat, if you will, and Miss Gillum seems the squeakier clean of the two, that's who I'm willing to trust. And I would hope that the public down here would do the same thing. So Miss Gillum, even though I've not made that phone call yet, I want you to know when you see this live stream, you have the support of myself, Prince Magnum, and hopefully the entire Maverick Nation, which right now is over 300 strong and growing. At last count this morning, it was 323. Thank you so much, guys, for continuing to hit that subscribe button, okay? Thank you all so much. It means the world to me, okay? Because, believe it or not, I am just the acting voice of the Maverick Nation. And for those who love Taver, hey, buddy. Anyhow, I needed you here. Buddy. But anyhow, here, I scoot you. Oh, I know you don't like it when I. There we go. There. He's sometimes he likes to be cuddled, sometimes he don't. Hey, he's having his moment where he's not super keen on being cuddled. But anyhow, okay, buddy, thank you. Um, all that being said, so Miss Gillum, you have the support of the Maverick Nation, and I think in a roundabout way, you may even have Tavor's support too. Hey, Tavor don't lie. Okay. uh, you know, um, you know, so again, yeah, we all love Tabor. We all love Tabor. So that's where we stand right now. The Prince Magnum channel and the Maverick. Hopefully, the entirety of the Maverick Nation is behind Miss Gillum, which is not just centralized here in St. Francis County. That's a lot of people from around the country and even outside the country. So, Miss Gillum, hopefully you decide too to become a member of the Maverick Nation. And I know Bert and I have even talked a little bit, and maybe he might even just put this in the chat uh, about how he might even be behind you. I'm hoping he does here in just a moment. I'm going to keep it going for just a little bit longer. So that's where we stand. The Prince Magnum channel wants our children home because wouldn't it be cool to have children and Project Spirit and Project Lena? That's the way it should be, but that's not the way it is right now. Okay? So that's where we stand on all of this. Um, so, all of that being said, the evidence is in front of us. You know, for the record, yes, we love Lucy too. We love Lucy too, Bert. Uh, Let me say right now, that's where we stand. And beyond that scope, we're just waiting for more and more to come in. There was a lot in this live stream, a lot in this live stream. On one man who I believe is just about evil incarnate, okay? But not in the sense of evil like you know. Anyhow, that's another subject for another live stream. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and quickly talk. We are going to try, weather permitting, now to do another live stream a little bit later today. That live stream will be on engine tech. Okay, we're going to talk about some engine tech and some old hot rodding stuff. We're going to do some nostalgic stuff because our boy Third Gen 83 and another particular gentleman asked for more on the cars, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do some awesome stuff with that, and even talk about some interesting stuff that isn't talked enough about with the inline sixes. We're gonna do some engine science with that. Ooh, spooky stuff, right? Spooky stuff. Anyhow, and we're going to break it down into layman's terms. That's going to kind of blow the minds of even some old hot rodders. So hold on to your hats there. Uh, we tried to do some stuff, last week from video. That's just going to have to be uploaded totally different. That's okay. But I've got some, but hopefully all goes well with video work tomorrow for the channel, and we're going to be incorporating that as well into, along with all of this. The Prince Magnum channel, we're going to be celebrating my birthday, which will be coming up. My birthday is August the 7th. The deadline for the giveaway, I'll have to check the Patreon account and see where we stand on all of that. But we do have a pretty neat little giveaway. It's not super big, but if you've had anything to donate, that's been awesome. So if you've not checked out the Patreon account, please do so at this time. Our goal is to hit $1,000 because we're looking to do some really awesome stuff to Project Spirit. Real quick, above and beyond that, if you've not checked out my Twitter, I have a Twitter account. You're welcome to follow me on Twitter. If you check out Bert TV's Facebook page, you'll run smack dab into me, actually. And you could get to know me personally on Facebook. I try to post a lot of inspirational stuff, Native American inspiration stuff, and you'll get to know kind of the Native American side of myself, along with I guess you could say the traditional Viking side of myself. To our current prosecutor, believe me, the old Viking and Native American in me almost wanted to call you out big time on this stuff, especially when it comes to the ladies and their honor. Anyhow, you're lucky. You're lucky, man. Anyhow, um, I would do it legally. We got a drag strip over here in Bond here. Anyhow, um, let's see. Um, Beyond that, if you want to become a member of the Maverick Nation, hit that subscribe button, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified every time we upload a brand new video. On top of that, we now have, if you will, if you want to, I guess you could say, if you want to contribute to making the Prince Magnum channel a little bit bigger. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. We have people that just love to try to interrupt the work that we do here on the channel. Evidently, someone from Salem, Oregon. I don't know who it is. Don't care to know who it is. We don't know anybody from Salem, Oregon. They can go jump in a lake. But, Anyhow, back to so if you can donate to the Patreon account, again, goal $1,000, and eventually we might just make that into a club for whoever decides to become full-time donators to the Patreon account. Okay, probably call it like the High Mileage Club, not the High Mile, but the High Mileage Club, referring to how Project Spirit's coming up on 300,000 miles. Let's see. Pretty well covers that. Again, if you'd like to see me sing live, check me out at Laz's Bar and Grill tomorrow night. I will be there around about 9 o'clock in the evening. And karaoke from Party Pro, the gentleman who will be operating this, operating the music will be none other than DJ Brian, who is a fantastic gentleman. If I do say so myself, he's a very fine man. And of course, the people who run Laz's Bar and Grill, even if you are not a drinker and you just like your soda, like myself, because I don't drink anymore, don't worry, they do not mind that because you're still buying up the stuff that they brought in. They're good people, doggone it. And it'll be ladies' night, bottomless cups. So, if you're definitely interested, please come out and see our people at Laz's Bar and Grill. I'll be there. And again, if you want to hobnob with me, you're more than welcome to. You should hobnob with me. All right. Cover that. All right. Brings us to the end. Thank you all so much who were kind enough to jump on, ask questions, what have you. I do apologize. The live stream might be a little choppy at points because we are expecting an incoming storm here in St. Francis County. So batten down the hatches, that sort of thing. Make sure everything's secure. Also, as usual, get out there and work on a project. Don't care what it is. Just do something with yourself. There's something to be said about that. Also, if you got a sweetheart, do something special for them. Guys, it doesn't have to be Valentine's Day to do something special for your other half. Okay? Do it anyways. Okay? Husbands, you know what I'm saying? Oh, gun. All right, saying, do it. Do it. And as always, if no one out there has told you that they love you, Prince Magnum does. God bless you. Sorry about that, just buttons. All right. For all of you out there, if no one out there has told you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you and have a happy 24. Thank you.